All right, so we're gonna just start out with a warm up and we're doing full body strength with weights. So before we get started, just make sure you have your weights. I have a mat down, but if you have a soft floor, that's fine. We're just focusing on strength today, so it's not going to be super sweaty, not a lot of cardio, but we're really focusing just on the weights. So let's get a couple shoulder rolls in and then change direction. Bring an arm across the chest. And when we do this arm across the chest, we want to feel that stretch in the back of the shoulder. If you don't really feel it much in the back of your shoulder when you do this, that means that your shoulders are pretty flexible or you're not very tight. So that's all right. But if you ever do feel like a little bit of tension and this just doesn't do it for you, another great stretch is to bring the backs of your hands to your back. So your palms are out just on the sides of your lower back, and then we draw the elbows forward. And you might feel a little bit more of a stretch back there. So we're going to do a lot for the back of the shoulder today. So make sure you do get that stretched out. Let's inhale up and then tilt to the right, to the left, and then bring it back down all the way to the floor. Let your arms hang down. If you want to take an even wider stance, you can. My hamstrings are always tight, so it's hard for me to reach the floor if my feet are close together. So I find a nice wide stance is a little bit better for me to balance so that I can stretch through my lower back, through my hamstrings. And then with our knees slightly bent, let's walk it to the right, opening up through the left side of our lower back. Take a few deep breaths. And every time you exhale, when we're trying to open up these muscles, it really helps to just try to relax with your exhale, relax those muscles in the lower back. Now let's walk it over to the left side. When we're reaching to the left, we should feel a little bit more of a stretch in the lower back on the right side. And you're also going to feel a stretch on the hamstring of your left leg. Walk it back to the center. Hands come up to the thighs, the knees are slightly bent, and we're going to arch the back into cat, and then arch in the opposite direction, looking up into cow, changing with your breath, rounding out the back, dropping the belly button down, and then back roll up all the way up. Let's get started with just a few balance stretches. So we're going to first start out by grabbing the right foot. If you need to hold on to the wall, a chair, go for it. I'd rather you be balanced and feel safe so that you can do the stretch effectively than to feel like you're struggling just to stay standing. We do balance in yoga class, so that's where we really focus on the balance exercise. And now we're trying to keep the right foot from touching the floor. We're just going to cross the right ankle over the left shoulder, bend the knees, and sink down. I'm having a rough time with that one today. Hold it there, take a few deep breaths. And when we do balance exercises, for this one in particular, we're stretching through the right side of the body, but the left side of the body is already doing work. So you're using your stabilizer muscles. Let's switch legs, go for a quadricep stretch. Grab that toe. Hold it there, stretching. You should feel a stretch in the front of the leg, maybe up into the hip flexor. Take a few more deep breaths. And then when you're ready, try to slowly transition to that glute stretch, so ankle over the thigh. Start bending the knees, sinking down. Hold it here, pushing the hips back. So we're going to work a lot of leg stabilizers today. And we usually do a lot of squats and lunges and things like that. But we're going to do some floor work for our legs with our weights. And release. Step it out. And if you have two sets of weights, start out with a lighter set. If you have just one set, that's okay. We can modify it if it gets to be too heavy. So we're going to start out with our hand weights, standing in a normal stance. Feet are wider than the hips, as wide as the hips, whatever's comfortable for you that you feel stable and balanced. Palms down. We're going to start out with a forward raise. Nothing too fancy here. As we go into our forward raises, if this gets to be too heavy, you can bend the elbows and raise it up so that the wrists still line up with the shoulders, and we're only lifting as high as the shoulders. So do what you've got to do, and if that still gets to be too much, you can also alternate sides. right side, and left side. So you pick how you want to do it. But what we work here in this forward raise is the anterior deltoid. So our deltoid is our shoulder muscle, and we have the front, the middle, and the back, anterior, medial, and posterior deltoid muscles. Oftentimes our anterior deltoids are a lot stronger. So you might find that this one's a little easier than the next exercise that we do. And our posterior deltoids tend to get kind of weak, and that's in the back of the shoulder. And they're kind of a posture muscle, but if we roll our shoulders forward on the regular, those muscles get overstretched. Go ahead and shake out the shoulders. We're gonna work the posterior next. So what I want you to do here is bend the knees and bring your back so that it's flat. So from the side, I have my knees bent, hips back, tailbone up. I'm looking forward, so I have a flat back. I have a little bit of an arch, like I'm doing cow pose, but that's okay. You just don't want to round out in the opposite direction. And the weights hang down in front of you. And then we open the arms as wide as we can, squeezing the shoulder blades together at the top. So open, squeeze, and drop. It's almost like you're opening storm doors or cabinets. And if you have a really hard time getting into form, like keeping your elbows open, you can also bring your hands so that they face one another. And that might help. Or you can hold your palms in a neutral grip down. So you're gonna feel this in the upper back. If this gets to be too heavy or too much, instead of shifting your body, like you'll see people kind of stand up as they do it. If you start to get into that territory, rather than shift your weight, bend your elbows, and then you're leading with the elbows. It's like you're trying to elbow something behind you and squeeze that way. That'll give you a little bit of a break. It's a little less work, but as we go, I'd rather see you do this modification than to lose your good form. And relax, roll your shoulders out. So we got the anterior and the posterior. All this left is the medial deltoid. That's right in the middle. So for these, we're just gonna stand up nice and tall. Arms come out to the side, wrists come into alignment with the shoulders. And we drop down. So we wanna make sure that we're controlling our speed. We're going up slowly, coming down slowly. So that way we're not using momentum to drive the weight up and gravity to pull it back down. If this gets to be too hard, again, you can bend your elbows and you're raising up so that your elbows are in alignment with the shoulders. And we're leading with the pinky finger with your elbows bent. So pinky finger to the ceiling if you're doing the bent elbow exercise. That way you're in good form for your shoulder. Give me a couple more of these. Make sure that as we do these exercises, we're also dropping our shoulders away from the ears. So when we work shoulders, we tend to want to shrug up and lift higher. So make sure you keep your shoulders nice and low. Let's bring our hands down. Now we're just going to do a basic shrug. So our shrugs get our traps, which is a muscle in the upper back. So we're holding the weight to our side. We're just going to lift the shoulders up as high as they go as we inhale. Exhale, press them down as low as they'll go. Inhale and exhale. When we press the shoulder blades down instead of just dropping, we're using underneath our shoulder blade, you'll feel those muscles engage a little bit more. So just inhale, lift, exhale, press down. We're doing a shoulder burnout at the very beginning because we have light weights. We want to make sure that we use our shoulders. We work every muscle in the shoulder because without strong shoulders, it makes it very difficult to do chest exercises, back exercises, even core exercises. So it's so important that we have well-balanced shoulders. One more shrug, and now we'll do upright rows. So we're bringing the weights together. My palms are neutral. I'm raising up collarbone level. Weights come just to my collarbone and back down. But if you notice, my elbows are nice and high. So we're gonna raise it up, drop it down. This is getting through the tops of the shoulders. So make sure elbows stay high and try to look at yourself. If you have a mirror handy, or sometimes I use a big framed picture to look at my reflection in it, make sure that your left side and right side are going up at the same distance so that we're not raising really high with one arm and the other arm's lower. We want to make sure we're doing the same amount of work on both sides. The nice thing about dumbbells is that we're forcing ourselves to do the same amount of work from side to side so we don't allow for imbalances. But imbalances can still occur in our lift with dumbbells if we're not doing the same thing on both sides. So elbows are nice and high. Shake it out. All right, this is one of the ones I really like for keeping your rotator cuff healthy. Just open the cabinet, close the cabinet. So we're keeping our elbows glued to our sides, elbows under shoulders, holding the weights together, keeping the elbows glued to the sides. We're opening the cabinet and closing. This one might not feel like much as you go through the range of motion, but what it does is it helps keep the rotator cuff nice and healthy so that you can go through your range of motion without pain. And when you're doing heavier work for the chest, for the back, you're less likely to injure your shoulder while you do those. Or if you fall or catch yourself from falling, you're less likely to get injured too in the shoulder. So keep going with these, but as you go, we've got a couple reps under our belt now. So start paying attention. Try to open as wide as you can while keeping your elbows glued to your sides. Do you have a difference in mobility from right side to left side? Does it feel a little bit different on one side than the other? Pay attention to these things to look for those imbalances and try to go the same distance on both arms. Let's do one more rep. And relax, give yourself a couple of shoulder rolls. We're taking short breaks because our weight is light. So we have our weights at our collarbones. Now we're gonna just press straight up and bring it down. We'll only do a few of these. Again, if this gets tiring, if your weight's not as light as you wish it was, you can go right side, left side. And notice when I get to the top of the motion, my weights don't touch. It can actually cause an impingement by slamming the weights together, bringing them really close, especially when the weights get heavy. So trying to keep the weights away from one another at the top of the motion. I know it feels satisfying to just cling the weights. You see it all the time at the gym. I think people really like the sound. I know I do, but when we're trying to avoid injury, we want to try to keep those weights from slamming into one another. Let's do one more repetition. And let's give our shoulders a little bit of a break. So let's go down into legs now. So I'm actually going to lay on my side for this one, and I'm going to have my heavy weight, or you can keep whatever weight you have. I'm going to have it handy, but the heavier the better. So I'm going to lay on the side on my mat. I want to make sure that my hips are stacked. So my right hip is right on top of my left hip. Right now it's not, so I have to drop down a little bit lower. And now my right side's right over my left side. I have my weight. I'm going to reach down as far as I can against my leg. My bottom knee is bent so that it's giving me stability. And now I'm just going to do a basic leg raise, holding it here. Flex the foot and keep the hips stacked. So if this exercise feels pretty easy, it could be that the outer thigh is strong, but it also might be that we start to lose that stack. So we might start leaning back, leaning forward. When we do this exercise, we tend to try to make it as easy on ourselves as possible. But we want to keep those hips stacked. All right, that was our warm up. So now we're going to bend both knees so that our ankles are on top of each other, and we're going to lift the ankles in the air. At this point, you might be able to roll the weight down a little farther on the leg, increasing the leverage, making it a little bit more work. Ankles are up. We're going to open the knee, point the toe, tap the toes together, and bring the knee back down. Let's do 8 of these. That was 1. Here's 2. This is a Pilates movement, and it's really good for building those outer thigh stabilizers. 4, 5. It's also important to keep these muscles strong because it stabilizes the outside of your knee. This is 7. Let's do 1 more. And this is all about control. So we're going slowly and controlled and drop it down. Well done. Put the weight down, and you can either flip it over, or I'm going to go on the other side of the mat so you don't have to look at my backside while I do these exercises. So I'm going to lay on my side. Again, we're making sure that our hips are stacked. One hip right on top of the other. Bottom knee is bent. Right leg is straight. We're reaching the weight down as far as we can reach so that it's even on both sides. And then from here, we just lift. Keep the foot flexed to protect the knee. So if you have IT band or TFL issues, or you ever get sciatica, keeping this muscle strong is important but also making sure it stays stretched. So you want this muscle to be, or this part of your leg to be both flexible and strong. So this is how we build strength. And the flexibility portion comes in yoga class when we do pigeon pose, or when we do anything with the knee over the thigh, or when we do our warm-up exercises with one foot in front of the other on the floor. All right, that was our warm-up. Bend both knees, ankles together. Remember, ankles stay lifted the whole time. Let's roll that weight down a little farther on our leg, keeping the ankles up at all times. Let's open the knee, point the toe, bring the toes together and close. 1, 2, we're going for 8, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Well done. All right, weights down. Let's keep it on the mat, but we're gonna bring it to our hands and knees. If you wanna grab your lighter weights, you can. If you only have heavier weights, that's fine too. We'll modify it by doing a bent elbow. So we're going to be working the back of the shoulder again. We're just doing our chest flies or our reverse flies in a different manner. So we're on our hands and knees, wrists under shoulders, and now we're gonna open on one side and open on the other side. So it's the same exact motion, but now we're on our hands and knees with a flat back, looking forward. We're a little bit more stable. We're not holding a squat, which means we're bringing our torso a little bit more parallel to the floor, which means the backs of our shoulders have to work a little bit more. So keep going through that motion. If you want to make it a core workout at the same time, what you'll do is you'll roll forward to make it a modified plank position, keeping the hips low. If that's still too easy and you want to make it a little bit harder, you can raise up into a high plank and do the same exercise. So you pick whichever one works for you. You can always change your mind. So I always like to invite people to try the harder exercise first after you do a few rounds to make sure it's safe, then go into the more difficult one and then drop down when you're ready. That's how we build strength. That's enough of those. Give yourself a couple wrist rolls. And now we're going to switch to our heavier weights, if you have them. If you don't, that's okay. Keeping it on our hands and knees, now we're going to do a basic row. When we do our row, we're pulling the weight up to the thickest part of our chest, tucking that elbow in, squeezing the shoulder blade towards the spine and back down, and then switch sides. Let's do a couple here for a warm-up. And then just like with the reverse flies, I'm going to invite you to drop down into a modified plank or a high plank. Give them both a try. So when we do our rows, you can try it in a high plank, right and left, or you can try it in a modified plank. Just make sure we're always looking forward, always squeezing the shoulder blade towards the spine. And drop it down. Give yourself a couple wrist rolls. We'll give our upper back a break. And we're going to move right into chest. So let's start with chest flies. I really like these. Heavy weights with you. If you only have light weights, the straighter your arms are, the harder you're working. So we're laying on our back here, starting out with a basic fly. So we're going to turn the elbows out to the side. So as we drop down, our elbows are actually the first thing to touch the floor. And once your elbows touch the floor, I want you to look over. Make sure your elbows are in alignment with your shoulders. That way we're protecting our shoulders. Always keeping elbows on the lines with the shoulders. Open and close. And then if you feel up to it, you can pick up the hips so that you are in a hip bridge position. But if you can't focus fully on the chest fly while lifting your hips, then go back into the regular hips on the floor. If that's too easy and you want a little bit more, you can raise one leg for one fly, raise the other leg for the other fly. So you can just switch back and forth, keeping the hips up. You pick what you do, as long as you're able to focus on the chest fly itself. Couple more reps. Keep going through it. And put the weights down. Give yourself a couple wrist rolls here. We're going to flip it over. And we're going to do modified push-ups next so that we're sure that we're using good form. So we're leading with the chest. So we're going to roll out so that our wrists are underneath our shoulders, but slightly wider. On the base of our quadricep muscles, not on our kneecaps. And then we're going to lift the hips just a tiny bit. So it's more than lifting the hips, we're just turning the tailbone up. So as we drop down, we're tapping the chest to the floor and then raising it back up. Our abs never touch the mat. So tap the chest, press it up. Keep going through these. Now at the bottom of the motion, you want to just take a quick assessment. Make sure that your wrists are in alignment with the shoulders, maybe a little bit farther back, but not too far back. And also you're looking at your elbows. Are they splayed completely out to the side or are they really tucked in? Really tucked in elbows, work the triceps a little bit more. But we want to find that happy medium between 90 degrees and 180 degrees. So keep going with those. Remember, tap the chest every time. If that means that you're just lowering down and laying down for a second and then getting up however you want, that's okay. Just make sure the chest is tapped. So the easiest version of this is to slowly lower down, chest tap, take a break, and then get up however you want. But we've all been doing push-ups for a while, so let's just do one more rep and call it a day with those. See some wrist rolls. Now we're gonna get some glutes and lower back. So we're gonna take our one weight, it can be heavy or light. I like to do this one with heavier weight, hooking it in behind the leg, hands and knees. And we're just raising up and dropping down. We're gonna do 10, but I'm gonna invite you to raise the opposite arm while you do these. Gives you a little bit more shoulder work. All right, let's do 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Switch sides. And make sure you're squeezing the weight with your legs. That'll get your hamstrings just a little bit more. All right, weight is in place, hands and knees. I invite you to lift the other arm, but if you don't feel safe doing that, that's fine too. Here we go, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, drop the weight out of the leg. And from here, we're gonna work our triceps. We're gonna do a new exercise for the triceps. New to this class, you might have done them before. I like the heavy weight for this one. So I'm gonna lay on my back. I'm going to lift the weight up over my arm, up over my shoulder. And I'm gonna look at my elbow, make sure my elbow is right over the shoulder. And then I'm gonna bring my other hand and just stabilize my upper arm so I don't go everywhere. Then I'm gonna lower the weight down to my opposite shoulder and straighten. So at the top of the motion, my wrist, elbow, and shoulder are completely aligned. At the bottom of the motion, my elbow is still over my shoulder and the other weight head is against my other shoulder. So important to use good form on this one to protect the shoulders. Let's do 10 on each side. Ready? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's switch sides. So now our other hand has the weight, wrist, elbow, shoulder alignment. Other hand is just stabilizing right below the elbow or above the elbow. Drop it down, raise it up, check your alignment. Let's do 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. Go ahead and grab the weight with both hands. We're going to raise the weight overhead. We're going to do another form of a tricep extension. So I make sure that my elbows are over my shoulders, one hand on each side of the weight. And I'm going to bring the weight down to about my forehead. Once the weight's there, I want to make sure I'm looking at my upper arms, that they're parallel lines and that the elbow is over the shoulder. I'm going to straighten again. So I'm keeping my elbows pointed to the ceiling, elbows over shoulders the whole time. This is a tricep extension. Now, if you want to add on to that by lifting your hips just to get a little more core work out of it, you certainly can. But make sure you're able to focus on the triceps as you're doing this, if you're doing it with your hips up. People call these skull crushers. I think you could see why, especially if you have a heavy barbell that's loaded. Now, since we have one dumbbell and we're sharing it between arms, this is one of those situations where we might end up pushing more on one side than the other. So try to be conscious of each hand and take note of how each arm feels as it's going through the motion. Do you feel like you're pushing evenly with both sides? When you did those single arm tricep exercises, did you feel like it was harder on one side than the other? Usually our dominant hand is the stronger hand. And relax, drop the hips. From here, since we're already on the floor, we might as well get some basic abs in. What we're going to do is bring our fingertips beside our ears, but we're not pulling our head. We're going to crunch to the right, bring it up to center, crunch to the left, and back to center. So both shoulder blades leave the mat as we lift. Keep your tongue pressed to the roof of your mouth. Keep your chin lifted slightly. So twist right, center, left, center. So when we twist to the right or the left, we're getting our oblique muscles. When we go to center, we're more into the rectus abdominis, which are like the six-pack muscles. And I really like this exercise as a quick ab workout because it focuses on the upper abs, but you get all of them. And if your low back is bothering you, you're taking your low back out of the equation. Let's try to incorporate our breathing with this. So we're using our exhale on the way up, if you can. Couple more reps. Use your breath. And relax. Let's bring it up into a standing position. The only muscle we didn't get so far was our biceps. So I want you to pick up your weights and we're going to do a bicep burnout. So we're going to start out palms up in a curl. Then we're going to rotate to neutral grip. Then we're going to turn our palms down into pronated grip. Then we're back to neutral. That's just a hammer curl. Palms up, supinated grip. So we're just constantly rotating our shoulder angle, our wrist angle. So we're going neutral, palms up, neutral, palms down. When we do the palms down, we're slightly widening our elbow angle, keeping the elbow under the shoulder. But when we do our palms down curl, arms are a little bit wider and we're making the letter W. Everything else, elbows are pretty close to the body. So you might feel this working in different parts of your bicep as you change hand position. And also, you might feel your forearms working because we're changing hand positions and rotating the wrist. If you took the wrist health yoga class yesterday, wrist should be nice and stretched out. That's a good way to keep the wrist muscles flexible. But doing this exercise is a good way to keep the wrist muscles strong. So throughout our body, especially in the joints, it's important to have muscles that surround those joints being both flexible and strong. We oftentimes think of it as one or the other, but we really need both of those things to happen. That's what having balance is all about. One more round with your curls. And go ahead and drop the weights. We're going to stretch out through the biceps first. Fingertips, opening up the hand, palm down, pulling the fingertips back. That helps to stretch through the biceps. And also the forearms, other side. Bringing the hands behind the back, clasp the hands, lift through the shoulders, open the chest. Reach the arms forward, spread the shoulders out, stretching through the back. Do the new back of the shoulder stretch. Palms open, backs of the hands touching your back. Bring the elbows forward. And then we're going to stretch the outer side. So we're going to cross the left foot over the right. Left arm reaches up as we tilt to the right. And we're pushing our hips to the left. You might feel that stretch through the whole side of the body. And then switch. Right foot steps over left. Right arm raises as we bend to the left. And then we're going to push our hips slightly to the right. Bring it up. Take a wide stance with the legs. Inhale up. Exhale all the way down. Let your arms hang down. Let your head hang down. Shake your head yes. Shake your head no. If you want to enhance that upper back stretch, you could slide your fingertips underneath your toes and then pull the torso upright slightly and gently. Only do this if your knees are slightly bent and your tailbone's pointing up. We don't want to injure our lower back. From here, bring the hands to the thighs, back roll up one vertebrae at a time, roll the shoulders back. Inhale up, exhale down. And we could call it a day. If you need a couple more moments to stretch, by all means take that, but I don't want to go too much over time. So enjoy, and if you wanted to go through all of these exercises again for round 2 to make it a full hour, you absolutely can.